rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters, viewers and friends of Iqra TV. Welcome back to Real Talk, the program that I used to do for a number of years and that I've not been able to do for a number of reasons for about a year and a half. I've certainly missed you. I hope you've missed me. I know some people have missed me, not many, but some people have missed me and have asked me to come back and do this program again. This program is about you and the Muslim community and the wider community, to talk about issues that affect us on a day-to-day basis, issues that affect our daily lives, whether it's to do with health, whether it's to do with education, whether it's to do with employment, whether it's to do with Islamophobia, generally all those institutions that are part of our day-to-day lives that affect us on a day-to-day basis. Something every day, something triggers to us and is effective in our day-to-day working, living conditions that we have. And that's why we've tried to revive. As you will see, we have a new set here. We have a new format, hoping that we're going to start with. And today I just want to have a general discussion. And if you are watching, if you can, please ring in. The number will be appearing on the screen to share your views and your thoughts. What I want to do today, I have some eminent guests with me, is to say, after a year and a half that I've been away and others have been trying to do this program and they've done it very successfully, I have guests here who are regulars on this channel, who come into your lives on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, giving you advice and guidance on a number of issues. We want to talk about what are the issues after COVID that have been important to the Muslim community, affected the Muslim community. We've all had to go through this very, very difficult and challenging times. COVID has made a huge change and a difference in the way we live our lives now. We have seen how our young people react to different issues, how COVID has affected people on a mental level as well, and all of us have been affected by the impact of COVID on our families. Many of us have lost dear and loved ones in our families as well. And that in itself has had a devastating impact on many, many families as well. So how has this affected you? Children have missed school, people in universities and colleges have not been able to sit their exams in the past. We're now slowly getting back into a routine of some sorts, but we've seen that during the height of the crisis, we had major shortfalls and inequalities in health and education, etc., emerge. Those issues, racism is now rearing its head. We've seen what's happened with Yorkshire Cricket Club. Last night we heard about Scotland, Sports Scotland, and they've come out with a report which shows that there were 400 incidents of institutional racism. Now these issues are affecting everyone. So what I'm talking about today with my eminent guest, and I have got two people here at the moment, I've got a third person inshallah joining me very soon. So can I first introduce our two guests that I have with me at the moment. One of them, in fact both of them, are familiar to viewers of Iqra TV and Real Talk. Maulana Hayat Khan, who does a program every Friday, on well-being. He's no stranger to this channel, and not only not stranger to this channel, he's no stranger to millions of people out there, because he's a very popular, well-known, respected ulama alim in not just this country but abroad as well. And sitting next to him is somebody who's been on the Real Talk program with me on a number of occasions, Shaheen Kosa, who used to be the Muslim chaplain at the Bradford Hospital, who worked during the height of the pandemic and saw some of the most difficult, challenging issues facing families when people were in hospital, at the point of death, some dying as well, and the families were not able to go there and visit them and be with them at that time when Allah Pak takes their life away out of them. And she was there holding hands, and she was personally affected by that as well. And we give credit to her for some of the support, all of the support she gave to families during that time. She currently works for the West Yorkshire Integrated Care System, and she's the Race Equality Project Manager there. So the two of you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Real Talk, the new format. I hope you like it, and I hope I'll be seeing you more often. Maulana, you'll do a TV program as well, but much more than that, you're a working, living imam in the community with a lot of strong networks in the community as well. Both your experience as a presenter, but also in the community. What are some of the key challenges? We want to just have a general discussion about what we see as some of the key issues that affect our community. So hang on, I'm going to start with the sister first, rather than the traditional male model of going to the man. So let's change that narrative. Shaheen, welcome to the program. Last time you came, or the one before that was when you were working at the hospital. Now obviously you've changed your role. You have now moved out of the hospital setting into the wider community network. You work with carers and people who are providing sort of care to their families. And so you see people in different settings now. I mean, and you're a big social media personality. You have many followers. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I'm not into social media at all. But I mean, you have the nerve of the community at your fingertips, basically. What are some of the issues that you feel currently of importance to our community?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to Jazakallah for inviting me. And I think for what I'm hearing time and time again, I'm taking a little bit of a respite from the hospital work that I'm doing, and that was for my own mental health. You can only deal with death for a short period, but when it's concurrent and the type of deaths that we've had, I don't think it's possible for any human to stay within a role like that. So I'm sort of grateful to the hospital to release me to do the job that I'm doing now. Equally, it's very rewarding. But what I'm hearing from my social media channels and everywhere I'm going, mental health is quite strife within the Muslim community at the moment, and trying to find bespoke help for women and men. Where do we find that help which fits within the realms of Islam? So that's one of the biggest challenges, and I would like to bring you in and say that, how do we address that within our communities? Where do people go? I was having a chat with Iqbal Bhai earlier on, and I was talking about mosques opening up their doors, for women, because we do have mosques which are open for salah and stuff. So how much, where do we have access for an imam, for instance? A woman wants to talk about spiritual distress, grief and bereavement. Where do we go as a community? And that's been one of the challenges for me personally as well. I got counselling, but was it fit for me? Actually, all I got was somebody to listen. It was great. I think talking to people is great. It's good. But really connecting yourself back with the Lord and spiritually connecting, knowing what we are internally, that we still, anyone can go through that. It doesn't matter how religious you are or not. So for me, it's about tackling where does the Muslim community go to access and get that help, which sort of puts them and lines them back with their faith when they're going through that turmoil.
Can I just hold it there? Because I don't want to go down the mental health route at the moment. I'm just looking at the general some major points around what are the other issues. Mental health is one. And I'm hoping to, as I said to you before we started, I want to do a specific program on mental health as well. So I'm going to invite some people who are specialists in this area.
So grief and loss, bereavement, grief and loss, and finding that support, that would be one of the biggest issues that I think.
But the second part of your what you just said is about women and access to religious facilities, etc., and support is an important issue that I will touch on that. But I mean, what are the other issues? I mean, young people and their connection to Islam. I mean, unfortunately, what I heard a couple of weeks ago, in fact, 2.5 years ago, we had a brother come here who was saying that in those days, he was saying that in his opinion, 3,000 young men and women renounced Islam. I'm hearing this on a regular basis at the moment, that there are so many young people who are so confused with their faith and their identity with Islam that they're actually questioning their connection with Allah and Islam as well. That's another issue we'll come to. What about issues around employment and discrimination? Do you see that as something that affects our young people as well, or even adults, and issues around Islamophobia? So I just want to talk about sort of general bullet points, and then we can sort of go into more detail. So Maulana, young people and Islam, the connections and the connectivity, do you find that in your work as well? Because when I speak to some of our ulama locally in Batley, where I live, Batley, Dewsbury, they've expressed some fear that there's the disconnect between the young people and the institution, which is the masjid at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, no doubt. Once again, like Sister, Jazakallah khair for having us, Iqbal Bhai. We missed you for a long time, mashallah. Yes, of course. So we see a disconnect. We see it every time. Alhamdulillah, nowadays it's a work in progress. We have many imams in many masajids who don't speak English even today. which is very, very strange. I mean, in Bradford, so many masjids, you know, they don't speak English. So, bichare, I give full kudos to these children who go to masjid. In spite of not understanding anything, you know, they come. Alhamdulillah. तो ये बात तो है ही है. This is, you know, this is it's a glaring in our face kind of scenario where children are not finding any kind of guidance on the only day most of them come to the masjid, which is Friday. But having said that, alhamdulillah, equally we're seeing people kind of reaching out and connecting with many social media ulama ikram. You know, there's many people, Sheikh Ahmad, Sheikh Zahir, and so much more, and that is very heartening, you see. But that maybe, I mean, look, to be honest with you, I have a sheltered life, and that's the truth. You know, I don't work in prisons. I don't, unfortunately, work in, you know, outreach programs for children, just because of the way things have, you know, panned out for me. As you know, I have my own 2 clinics, and then I teach the children, I teach the girls in the Fountain School and the Eternal, you know, secondary school. So, and then we do fatawa. You know, we do fatawas for the people, questions. So my only link with, you know, to answer your question, to see as to what's happening with the children is what we get from people giving questions and who I meet on the Jummas we go around the country doing. And I see this, a lot of atheism, a lot of atheism. And in fact, there's a famous study that's been done in the States which says that the 2nd and 3rd generation in America now, it's like 1 in 4, 1 in 5. You know, children who say we're not Muslims. So we're just across the pond. What happens there, it comes to us as well. So it's incredibly important that things have to change dramatically, drastically. You know, we have to do the outreach work. And there's, you know, Mufti Abdurrahman Manghera Sahab from London and White Thread Press and these guys, they're doing fantastic work when it comes to, you know, questions that people may have, that question, make them question their, you know, their faith. And it's a lovely course. I think it's called Faith in Crisis, but there's about 19 different questions in depth that, you know, people have asked, and they've done a mufassal, detailed, elaborated, you know, answers for these, and they do it, you know, face to face. But the only thing is, the problem with that is that it's very, it's too less. It's like tip of the iceberg. I mean, this should be done in every masjid.
Is that something that, because Maulana Abdul Rahman Manghera, for example, and, you know, Sheikh Zahir Mahmood, etc., their first language is English. They can connect with young people. But they are the rarity, as you say, because they don't have access to the other sort of mosque. Is that because some of our sort of elder ulama are reluctant to give up their position and therefore not allowing young people like yourselves and others to come and take on the role and responsibility of leading the community?
I don't think so. I think the many ulama are happy, and many people given platforms, and they, you know, they go everywhere. But only problem is there's only a few of these guys who can do this. You see, I mean, every Saturday, Sunday they're out and about, like Azam bin Asab, but these guys, they go around and they spread the message. So, I mean, there will be a percentage of people who want to hold on to their seats and hold on to the, you know, the old guard, so to speak, who are entrenched in the old version. But more or less, it's like a wave now. Things are moving, you see. So from my experience, you know, the most of masjids
I mean, the time scale that we are working to at the moment, if the longer there's a gap between connectivity with the young people and
very
the
dangerous.
masjids, it's absolutely horrendous.
Absolutely, I agree with that point.
You know, if there is a big gap there, how many young people are we going to lose from Islam?
Hundreds of thousands, by Iqbal, by it's happening every single day as we speak. It's happening, you see.
Yeah.
So just to come in onto the conversation that you said is with the traditional methods of the older imams, the way that they've worked traditionally. I'm not sure if that method really works nowadays with young people, you know, young girls and boys. We've got social media, which is taking the world by storm. So people don't look at the news anymore. If they want to see what's going on, they are going to click TikTok, Instagram, you know, and that's where people are getting their news from. And whatever information, it just goes viral. That's the kind of platforms that people need to be using. So I say, you know, change your tactics and find yourself. And there's lots of people on there really good, like Mufti Menk.
I was just going to say,
Mufti Menk has connected
nice.
very well, and everyone follows him because he's got really good. And that's what we need, is from our local imams, leaders, people who are in that, you know, who are your real influencers. So
but you see, I mean, I congratulate Maulana Hayat Khan and Maulana Fazal Dad and others who, you know, who have broken that little sort of this glass ceiling. there are still a lot of traditional alims from the first generation who still say TV pe jana haram. Now, how do you sort of navigate through that? Because that we still are, whether we like it or not, are still, in the majority, we still have these imams running our masjids at the moment. And when people like Maulana Hayat Khan and they'll appear on TV, they're seen as, badal gaye hain bhai. So
there's bigger people than me, Iqbal Bhai, who are appearing on TV.
Oh yeah, well, no, I'm saying I pay tribute to you because that's the media coming back to Shaheen. And then there's this issue about young people being told not to go on Mufti Google and look for answers over there, because that way what our senior imam is saying is, and there is a danger because Google is not the answer to everything, but how do we make sure that they go to the right person in the first place?
And that's the question, that's what I was going to bring it down to. Who are your real influencers? So these people, everyone gets called an influencer on social media, and somebody said that to my daughter, we look up to you as an influencer. She does makeup, like she doesn't talk. She says, don't look at me as an influencer. Can you look at the Prophet's wives as your influencers, like Hazrat Aisha, and they were your real influencers, but they're not here to tell the story. So who do girls now look up to? Absolutely anyone who's got lots of followers. And that's a real shame, because if the information they find which is incorrect, because they look at this person and idolize them, they will take it as the gospel.
Yeah.
So I think that people like yourself, Maulana Hayat, and others in young people like yourself, you could perhaps influence the older generation to bring them in line to say, this is the issues that we're having, and it means that you've got to now change the tactics with what we need to do with the young people. I think that would work if they were.
That's happening in many masjids, you see. That's happening. I mean, the masjids, I know, and I don't have a whole directive of all the masjids, but this is happening. There's no choice but for it to happen. And when it doesn't happen, then what happens simply is the masjids, the congregation goes down and everything goes down. So even they realize that, the Jummah collections are happening. So it's happening slowly, and we need to do a lot more. But it's happening, and it's an inevitable conclusion for it to happen. Some places happening. Like the different cities, every city's got its own kind of ethos and its energy. Bradford's dynamic, alhamdulillah, Birmingham, London, but there's other places, mentioning no names, where they're still in the 70s regards the masjid committee, what goes on, and after the imam and all these things. So what can you do? You can only do what you can do.
My other guest who will be joining us after the break, Ishtiaq, has been at the forefront of the Council of Mosque in Bradford, and has been there, right since its inception, and has been one of those people who has influenced quite a lot of change.
MashaAllah.
And I'm glad he's going to be joining us after the break, because his knowledge and experience and his foresight is going to be very valuable to this discussion. But beyond the mental health issues, beyond the issues about where do we take the next generation, how do we make sure that this dawah work continues, and we continue to bring our young people into the fold of Islam. What are some of the other issues, like I said, in terms of education, health, Islamophobia? Are there other issues that you feel that we need to be really conscious about and need to be tackling in our community? I mean, you work in the with the carers as well.
Yeah, I
so
think
that's a huge gap there, isn't there, as well?
I think it's there's a lot of work. I think that topic could be a completely separate one around the carers agenda, but certainly around race equality, and because of what's happening in the pandemic, it's really come to the surface. The equality issue has really come to the surface, and the government has actually put a lot of money into sort of levelling up. Levelling up looks like, there's so many reports which have been released on people and racism, with institutional racism within sectors like the NHS.
But then, how do you counter the fact that even now, if you look at the two candidates for leadership of the Tory party, and one of them will be the Prime Minister, they do not acknowledge equality as a big issue. In fact, some of the language that they're using are counterproductive to that. They're talking about migration, immigrants, we don't, etc., etc. How do you counter that? Because on the one hand, they say we believe in all this, but if you look at Boris Johnson and the comments he made about Muslim women, for example, and he has completely refused to apologize on that. How do you counter all that in the current format?
I think, unfortunately for me, there's a lot of distrust with the political parties, full stop. I don't trust our politicians. if they could break the rules at the height of the pandemic and have private parties, and yet they've told us that it's the disease which is happening, the pandemic, you could die, you know, people are going to die, you need to social distance, but yet they were together. So either they know something that we don't know, or it wasn't going to affect them, death, for what's happened. So there's a lot of distrust. So it doesn't matter who becomes a politician. I think if you ask most people, Muslim or non-Muslim, they will tell you the same, that we don't trust our government, unfortunately, because you can only trust somebody and look at the behaviours and the way they speak. The way they speak to each other, actually, you know, it raises my hair on my head to think, if this is the people that we're supposed to look up to, this is the government of this country, what do we expect other people to do? And that's for me. I don't know what you think about that.
100%, I agree with you, it's crazy.
You
No, I just, Sister Sor, hey, it's like, you know, what do they say? Do as I say, not as I do. Tomasha, there's a very big distrust with the current political paradigm, and all the parties seem to be together. But sorry, Bal, what was your point? You were asking.
My point was, obviously, we talked about mental health. We talked about issues affecting other people in the community and the young people as well, going away from Islam, unfortunately. I was saying, what are the other big issues that we as a community face? Islamophobia is one of it, for example.
No doubt, Islamophobia. Every report that comes out, we another we see some more worm under the proverbial kind of a stone. It's well entrenched in British society. It's in every bureaucracy. It's in the police. It's in the even unfortunately our medical system. It's just, and then before we used to think it's just the working class, and now we find out it's not the working class. It's actually more entrenched in the medium middle classes. So it gets worse and worse. It's like a cancer. But the point I wanted to mention was this: that mental health and young people who you wouldn't imagine that they'd have any panic attacks. Without exaggeration, every week we'd have 3-4 people coming through the door with panic attacks. People who you wouldn't even imagine, this person, healthy person, mentally healthy. Suddenly, because of the pandemic, it's kind of done something to them, or it's triggered something that's happened in the past. I'll give you an example. One of my friends, he lost his father when he was 7 in Ramadan. So now he's married, he's got his own children, and he has this fear that gives him panic attacks, full panic attacks. He gets tachycardia, his heartbeat goes through the roof, his oxygen levels starts to go down, and he's worried that his family's going to lose him, he's going to lose his family, or they're going to lose him. And the poor guy, bichara, so this is happening it's happening with, it's happening a lot.
There's something about generational trauma. Something which has happened, and I think this is another thing that we never talk about is very old hidden trauma, and the pandemic has just made it worse. So the anxiety and the panic attacks that you talk about, it's because things have happened in the past. People haven't spoken about it, haven't dealt with it, and what happens is when another big event happens in your life, and those are the signs and symptoms of
That's exactly what's happened with this friend of mine.
Yeah, it's
generational trauma, or previous trauma,
and that is actually so common with so many people.
As I say, I understand that. Now, I want to do a program on Islam and mental health. Because what does Islam say when somebody has a mental health issue? Because there was a study done by Leeds Mental Health, I think it was many years ago, about people who have faith and who are suffering from mental health issues. Their recovery period is much faster and much better than for somebody who has no faith whatsoever. And I think they use the Quran and the teachings of the Quran and the Hadith, etc., in helping people with mental health issues to try and get a better understanding of their particular mental state in relation to what Islam and what Islam says. So we can come back to that. But in terms of Islamophobia and trust in government and institutions, that is something that we can. And I'll be talking. I've invited the Police and Crime Commissioner West Yorkshire to come on my program. She has been on before, Alison Law, to come and talk about where we're standing now around equality and diversity, and particularly Islamophobia. And I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks she'll be coming on my program to come and talk about that. You raised another issue about prisons, and the number of Muslims in prisons exponentially is much higher than it should be, proportionately when you look at the population. That's another thing that we're going to be looking at. And I'm sure you will have seen in my past programs, we had a wonderful young person called Sophie Bunsi, who works with Muslim prisoners, women prisoners, and has done some amazing work around that. And my next guest, my colleague who's going to be joining me, Ishtiaq, who has been at the forefront of that as well. So we can talk about that. But I mean, these issues are at the forefront of a number of people's sort of day-to-day lives. But what I wanted to sort of discuss is the general issues that affect people. Are there any other issues? We talked about mental health, we talked about Islamophobia, we talked about Islam and young people. Are there other issues that come to you? One of the reasons I'm asking you this is based on what you say to me and what Ishtiaq is going to say to me. I'm hoping that this program over the next few weeks and months will actually try and address some of those issues on a single sort of program issue. So we'll talk about carers, for example, mental health in Islam, and I'll bring Maulana Hayat inshallah back. I'm trying to get some of the professionals who work in mental health to come and talk about this issue as well. And Islamophobia, I'm going to get, as I say, Alison Lowe here at some stage to come and talk about the institution, the police. Now you use the word, people don't have trust and confidence in these institutions. The local authority, for example, the council, touches our day-to-day lives every day, and that is a very big institution that affects us on a day-to-day basis. Now, how do people think that they deliver their services? Do they provide services in a way that is reflective of the Muslim community or the Asian community, for that matter? These are some of the issues that we need to talk about. And do our councillors who make these decisions that they affect our day-to-day lives, do they reflect some of those issues, whether in Bradford or anywhere else in the country? I mean, these are important factors that we need to talk about. We'll be going for a break soon. Inshallah, when we come back after the break, Ishtiaq will have joined us, and we'll carry on with that debate, because Ishtiaq has been at the forefront of some of the politics in Bradford as well over a number of years. In fact, I think probably say about 40 years. So it'll be interesting to see what his thoughts are around our politicians and politics and where we need to go. Inshallah, don't go away. As I say, have a nice cup of tea, coffee, or a mango lassi, or whatever you like. Inshallah, we'll be back very soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.